For years, the Nissan Kicks was the car you recommended with a caveat. Efficient, affordable, practical, and rarely something you bought because you were excited. Nissan has now split that formula in two. The Kicks Play carries on as the brand's entry-level option, while this new generation Nissan Kicks moves upmarket. It's fully redesigned, bigger, more powerful, now available with all-wheel drive, and loaded with tech Nissan once saved for pricier models. But fixing its biggest weaknesses also introduced a few new compromises. Today we're breaking down top features of the 2026 Nissan Kicks you'll love and some you won't, and whether this new positioning actually works. Let's start with the biggest improvement because it completely changes how this car feels the moment you drive it. Power. The old Kicks Play was famously underpowered, not officially classified as dangerous, but merging onto a busy highway definitely felt like a life choice. The new Kicks fixes that with a proper 2-liter engine, making around 141 horsepower. And while that number won't impress spec sheet warriors, the real-world difference is immediately noticeable. Nissan also cut the 0 to 60 time down to the 9-second range, which doesn't sound thrilling until you remember where the old car started. Acceleration is smoother, throttle response is quicker, and the car no longer feels strained just keeping up with traffic. Compared to a close rival like the Honda HR-V, the Kicks finally has a clear edge in straight-line performance, especially at city speeds, where the HR-V still feels heavy and sluggish. Even better, Nissan didn't sacrifice efficiency to get there. Front-wheel drive models deliver roughly 31 miles per gallon city and 36 miles per gallon highway, striking a balance that finally makes the Kicks feel like a grown-up daily driver instead of an entry-level compromise. And that extra power matters even more because of the second major upgrade, available all-wheel drive. This is completely new for the Kicks, introduced with the latest redesign and carried into the 2026 model year. Previously, the Kicks was front-wheel drive only, which ruled it out for large parts of the country. Snowy climates, rural roads, steep driveways, buyers who needed extra traction simply looked elsewhere. Now the Kicks finally enters that conversation. All-wheel drive doesn't turn it into an off-road SUV, and Nissan isn't pretending it does, but it adds a real confidence in poor weather and makes the Kicks a true year-round daily driver. More importantly, it suddenly becomes a viable alternative to the Subaru Crosstrek, often for several $1,000s less, which is a big deal for value-focused buyers. Inside, the upgrades continue, and honestly, this is where Nissan really surprised people. The cabin no longer feels like a cost-cutting exercise or a reminder that this is an entry-level model. Higher trims get dual 12.3-inch displays stretching across the dash, and they genuinely elevate the interior. The graphics are sharp, response times are quick, and the layout feels modern without being overwhelming or gimmicky. Wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto are here, and Nissan deserves credit for not burying basic functions deep inside touchscreen menus. Climate controls, drive modes, and volume still use real buttons and knobs. In 2026, that kind of restraint feels refreshingly thoughtful and surprisingly premium. The exterior design itself is another win, and visually it's almost unrecognizable from the old model. The new Kicks is boxier, bolder, and far more SUV-like, with a wider stance, shorter overhangs, and a more planted posture. The front end is sharper and more upright, paired with slimmer lighting elements and a stronger shoulder line that adds real visual muscle. Nissan says the design draws inspiration from sneaker culture, and if you look closely, you'll see it, especially in the textured rocker panels designed to mimic the sole of a shoe, along with the layered surfaces and contrasting trim. It sounds gimmicky on paper, but in person it actually works. Even the color choices and roof treatments lean into that streetwear meets function vibe. The result is a modern, confident design that feels intentional rather than anonymous. What's impressive is that even though the Kicks grew up, it didn't lose the qualities that made it easy to live with. Visibility is still excellent. The driving position feels natural. The steering is light without being numb, and the turning radius makes city driving painless. It's still the kind of car you can hop into after a long day and not think about. That's an underrated skill, and Nissan kept it intact. So far, this all sounds like a redemption arc, and in many ways it is. But now we need to talk about the parts that might make some buyers hesitate. First, the transmission. Yes, it's still a CVT. Nissan has continued to refine its tuning, and in everyday driving, it's smooth and mostly unobtrusive. The CVT now simulates gear shifts under acceleration, which helps prevent that familiar rubber band effect and keeps it from droning endlessly on the highway. That said, if you're the kind of driver who values crisp throttle responses or enjoys feeling real gear changes, this setup won't win you over. It does its job, and it does it better than before, but it remains very much a let's get where we're going efficiently transmission. Perfectly fine for commuting, just don't expect much personality. Pricing is another area where opinions will split. The old Kicks built its reputation on being aggressively affordable, often undercutting rivals by a wide margin. The 2026 Nissan Kicks still starts at a reasonable place, with base trims landing in the low $20,000 range, but the story changes as you move up the lineup. Once you add all-wheel drive and step into higher trims with the larger screens and upgraded tech, the numbers rise quickly. An SR all-wheel drive with the premium package can push close to $33,000, and at that point, buyers may start cross-shopping something like the Toyota Corolla Cross or the Honda HR-V, both offering more interior space, even if they don't feel quite as modern inside. It's also worth noting that the Kicks is built in Mexico, which helps keep costs competitive. Do you want newer tech in a smaller package or more room in something more traditional? That trade-off is now front and center. Rear seat space and cargo room also deserve realistic expectations. They're improved, no question, but this is still very much a subcompact SUV. Rear legroom sits at around 34 inches, which works fine for adults on shorter trips, but isn't ideal for hours-long road travel. That said, Nissan helps compensate with comfort. The Kicks gets Nissan's zero-gravity seats, not just up front, but also in the rear outboard positions, a rare move in this segment. The seats are scientifically designed to reduce fatigue, and they genuinely stand out as some of the most comfortable you'll find in any subcompact SUV. Cargo space measures roughly 25 cubic feet behind the rear seats, expanding to about 60 cubic feet when folded. That's plenty for daily life. Groceries, gym bags, strollers, but big family vacations or spontaneous Costco runs will still require some planning. Nissan squeezed out smart gains, but physics still wins. There's also the question of identity. The new Kicks is objectively better in almost every measurable way, but some buyers liked the old one precisely because it was simple and inexpensive. This version feels more polished, more premium, and more ambitious, which is great, but it also means it's no longer the default cheap and cheerful choice. Nissan is clearly aiming higher, and not everyone will want to follow. Stepping back though, it's hard not to respect what Nissan has done here. They didn't just patch weaknesses, they rethought the car's role entirely. The new Kicks is no longer something you settle for, it's something you choose because it fits your life, your commute, and your priorities. It finally competes on equal footing with rivals that used to outclass it without trying. The biggest takeaway is this: the Nissan Kicks has grown up, and it's no longer trying to be the cheapest option in the lineup. That role now belongs to the Kicks Play. This new generation Kicks is more capable, more confident, and far more complete than anything Nissan has offered at this size before. You'll appreciate the added power, the available all-wheel drive, upgraded tech, and bolder design. You might not love the higher pricing, that CVT, or the fact that it's moved away from bargain basement territory. But for buyers who want a small SUV that feels modern, intentional, and genuinely competitive in 2026, this new Kicks makes a very strong case.